Hi, I'm Angeline. This is a presentation that I gave in March 2023 to the American Rock Art Research Association, and it's called Swastikas as Spacetime. It is the summary and highlights of a paper that I wrote for the same organization that is under peer review at the moment. So, to start out, just first of all, so that everyone can relax and enjoy the presentation, I'll explain why I'm using the word swastika. Ruth Bunzel explained that the Zunis do not generally explicitly name designs. They experience such images as sensual rather than intellectual phenomenon. We don't know what archaic indigenous people would have called this image, if they called it anything at all. There are so many languages that would have been using this image at that time that even to select one would not really make sense for the purpose of this presentation. We don't really have the right word, so I am opting to use the 2,500-year-old European word swastika. It has nothing to do with it has no political association that we should bear in mind at all. It's a 2,500-year-old word, swastika. Okay, so that's the word I'm using for this presentation. And how do I move to the next slide? Oh, here we go. Okay. All right, so let's start off at the beginning with a really simple question that everybody knows the answer to. What is space-time? That's like the $10,000 question, right? It's like asking, what is God? It's an ineffable concept, but I'm going to do my best to actually describe it through the worldview of people who depicted it on local rocks before the year 1100 CE. That's before the Pueblo period, specifically in southern Arizona and New Mexico, where Hohokam and Mogollon lifeways were practiced. A young Karas boy told Dennis Tedlock, if you don't ask questions when you grow up, you don't ask questions when you grow up. You watch and listen and wait, and the answer will come to you. It's yours then, not like learning in school. When looking at visual imagery made by ancient humans, we have to look for nuance and intent, especially when designs are associated with the religious, which, as countless scholars have pointed out, is indivisible from secular life in animistic traditions. That young Karas boy would have had a lifetime to internalize this cultural concept of space-time, and we only have about 15 minutes. So I've decided to dedicate the bulk of this presentation to invoking a sensual understanding of space-time using available ethnography, which is only a portion of my paper, but in the interest of time, I'm presenting the part that's the most fun and visually appealing. So I'll begin with the Zuni description of space-time using Jane Young's schematic. This is the Zuni vision of the Earth's horizon with the solstice rise and set points. The inclusion of the zenith and the nadir extends the circle into a sphere. So it's not just north, south, east, west on a flat plane, but you've also got a zenith and a nadir. So all these directions happen in all directions in a spherical space. The inner circle and cross represent the heart and legs of the water snake. I'm sorry for the interruption, but when I was recording this, for some reason I must be having a stroke. My brain cannot manage to say the word water skate. I keep saying water snake, but I mean water skate. That finds the center place described in the Zuni origin story. As a static image, the water snake's belly indicates the navel, a conceptual center place of Mother Earth. The Zuni also built their center place, present-day Zuni Pueblo, in an ideal location to be their geographic center. According to Young, at the center of the village, on a permanent altar in the fourth underground of the house of the chief priesthood, is a heart-shaped rock, the heart of the world, which has within it arteries that reach to the four solstice directions, just like the water snake. The Zuni have 4 underworlds, each with a totem tree, and 4 upper worlds, each with a totem bird. The Zuni concept of space is as a series of concentric spheres. So if you go down 4 levels and you go up 4 levels of a worldview that's already a sphere, like we talked about in the previous slide, that's a sphere inside a sphere inside a sphere inside a sphere, right? So and then the center, which is where we are. So you've got basically 5 us, then 4 underworlds and upperworlds, 2, 3, 4. So that's 5 spheres nested in each other. Jung describes the number 5 as derived from the 2 major cosmological principles of the Zuni, Itawana, which is center, and Awitan, which was 4. This means that a cross has 5 components, the 4 spokes, and a meaningful center. Therefore, any X-shape, cross, or quincunx can be drawn to symbolize the concentric nature of space. I know what some of you are thinking when you see the cross at the center of this image, and you're thinking, Angeline, that represents Venus. Because in the rock art world, the outlined cross is often said to represent Venus. And there's a whole story that goes along with that. And I agree, in some contexts, it does represent Venus. However, it also simultaneously represents space-time. Those 2 concepts, and the reason Venus is represented this way is because they have an underlying related understanding of what's important, and it has that space-time element embedded within the story of Venus. So the same image can represent multiple things. So in my paper, I emphasize the multivalent and multi-referential nature of important symbols, and how some of the most potent symbols are able to express a variety of ideas simultaneously. In other words, in different contexts, one symbol can have various meanings, but all of those meanings are layered upon a foundational concept that underlies every context where that image appears. Or, as the Zuni put it, they're all the same thing. Cosmology based on a spherical 3D space seems to be shared by ancient Southwesterners and by people of at least as far south as Mesoamerica, but it's not the cosmology of the Mescalero Apache, for example, whose ancestors only entered the Southwest after the year 1400 CE or so. They orient to a 2D space with a quartered circle indicating the 4 cardinal directions. This suggests to me that the spherical worldview may have come to the Americas with the first Amerindian speakers, and that's why we find evidence of it in the archaic Southwest as well as formative period Mesoamerica. The Zuni conception of space is spherical and contains the concept of movement within that sphere, because it contains the 4 cardinal directions and the journey of the sun in semi-cardinal directions. So the sun doesn't just go like this. The sun has an arc to it. So it's spherical. Plus the zenith and the nadir. And I'm going to break this down into smaller pieces that align with related rock images. Imagine you are a single dot in infinite space. You have no awareness of how big or small you are, so theoretically, you're both infinitely big and infinitely small at the same time. The only thing that gives you any sense of size is comparing yourself to something else that in your perception is either bigger or smaller than you. This is how the Zuni treats space and time. So through ritual, there is a collapsing of both space and time. It can be this size, it can be this size, but they're all happening at the same time. So by donning ritual regalia, a practitioner both exists physically as himself, the physical individual, but also as a supernatural deity that resides in another plane of the Zuni cosmos. So in this ritual context, the person embodies both inner and outer space at the same time. Through ritual activity, the practitioner merges the present time with myth time by invoking ancestors of the past to perform compulsive magic now. So the concentric circle demonstrates the static iteration of being here and there, now and later, all at the same time. Another way to say this would be that concentric circles represent beingness, isness, allness, oneness of all space and time. And again, I'm repeating this interpretation from Zuni ethnography. Beingness takes on a different character when you add movement. When you take that infinitely big and small dot and begin to move it around a spherical cosmos, at any given time it will be moving either toward its center or the periphery of that sphere. And the spiral represents the journey from the outer to the inner and the inner to the outer simultaneously. The spiral itself can't be interpreted as only one or the other. Context lends its direction and various definitions, such as water, wind, journey, in search of the physical or spiritual center. But that only pertains to, one of those definitions would only pertain to that one contextualized spiral in that one place. The spiral as an icon always maintains the properties of movement both in and out, suggesting that contextualized spirals are also conceptually linked to the movement aspect of every spiral. These images are 3 different iterations of the swastika motif that represent the structure of our physical space and time. The swastika has the properties of the spiral in that it demonstrates movement both in and out at the same time. It has the properties of the concentric circles in that it demonstrates rotation around a central axis, the axis mundi, if you will. And the swastika also has another property in that it's unique from concentric circles and spirals. It combines movement and the infinity of space and time at the center. The axis of the cross is that 5th element, as discussed earlier. It's that central dot that allows ritual time and space to expand and contract within it. The spinning arms give the form movement, and they remind us that space is both around us and inside us, and that our movement within space is always a journey that's in relationship with the center. This idea of space-time moving around a central axis is even easier to visualize when looking at its expression in ceramics. In this hohokam bowl to the right, notice how the 4 axes are offset, creating a central motif similar to the petroglyph from New Mexico on the left. I offer this comparison to demonstrate how a quincunx becomes a swastika by offsetting the center to indicate movement. This bowl on the right also has a reference to 3D space. First, because the images are literally imposed on a 3D hemispheric surface, and second, because the curlicues in the interstitial spaces between the main cross areas, they appear to be representing near and far perspective of a 3D rolling swastika. The largest swirls appear nearer, and the thin, disconnected swirls look as if they're peeking out from behind further away. In the pre-Pueblo period, that's before the year 1100 CE or so, there was what I call an arc of influence connected by Uto-Aztecan languages from the North American Southwest down the coast of West Mexico and into Central Mexico. I spend a great deal more time explaining how goods and ideas were exchanged along this route in my paper, so I hope that you'll have the opportunity to read it once it is published. But anyway, it's that unbroken connection along the arc of influence that gives me confidence in the interpretations I'm making, because there was shared iconography all along this arc from the southwest to Teotihuacan. A great deal of credible scholarship about Teotihuacan agrees that the city of Teotihuacan itself was founded upon the concept of a cosmos made of space-time, represented by an encircled cross. In fact, under the largest pyramid in the city, the Pyramid of the Sun, there is a quatrefoil or 4-lobed flower-shaped cave complex at the very center of the pyramid. I propose that swastikas in pre-classic Hohokam and pre-Pueblo Mogollon are homologous with quincunxes and quatrefoil flowers in early Quetzalcoatl cult societies, at least as early as Teotihuacan. I suggest that West Mexico was the connection, filter, and sometimes source through which these ritual goods and ideas passed between central Mexico and the North American Southwest. Scholars have demonstrated that many central Mexican religious expressions appeared in the Southwest during the Pueblo period. My paper aligns with Wilcox and Wigand's 2008 suggestion that the North American Southwest was not, quote, Mesoamericanized in the Pueblo period, but rather that Southwesterners already shared a cosmological framework with central Mexico when new expressions of familiar values were introduced. So let's do a quick thought experiment that leans into my premise that the archaic Southwest shared a lexicon of icons with Mesoamerica. This is on a monument at Chalcatzingo from the formative period between Olmec and Maya. Maya scholars interpret this vignette as cosmic monster, in this region a crocodile, standing on a lazy S skyband, which indicates he's not on Earth, but on a level of the divine upper world, and he's breathing wind onto a thundercloud, which makes the cloud drop rain. To the right is an Arizona petroglyph in the Gila style, which dates between 1450 to 300 BCE. It also includes what could be interpreted as a cosmic monster, a mythical reptilian being of some sort in this region, likely a lizard, accompanied by a lazy S skyband. The reptile appears to be either emitting something from its mouth or something is falling down on it from above like a raindrop. Continuing this thought experiment using the definitions I've shared throughout this presentation, let's just pretend that we can interpret parts of this Gila-style panel using Chalcatzingo's vocabulary. At the center, there's a pot-bellied individual, possibly a cosmic monster in the form of a horned toad, maybe. A spiral touches its foot underneath a lazy S skyband, indicating that the individual is on a journey into the supernatural upper world over the skyband. Above and to the left are three wavy lines that represent a thundercloud in the supernatural realm. We know they are in the supernatural realm because they are above the lazy S skyband. Below the spiral are two twirling swastikas, showing that the sun continues to make its revolutions around the earthly center place below. My presentation today has offered ethnographic evidence to support the possibility that this kind of interpretation could be entertained, and my paper elaborates on the supporting data. I hope that in some way this has enhanced your perspective of rock art in the Southwest. I thank you for your time, and I'll see you next time.